Why do small actions feel so insignificant in the moment, but so powerful over time? Think about it. Reading 10 pages doesn't feel like progress. Skipping one workout doesn't feel like failure. Missing one day doesn't feel like it matters. But here's the question. If small actions don't matter, why do small patterns define people? Because over time, those insignificant choices don't stay small. They stack. Quietly. Relentlessly. So what happens when someone repeats a positive action every day for 5 years, compared to someone who skips it just often enough to break the pattern? The difference isn't dramatic at first. It's invisible. Until one day, it isn't. So here's the uncomfortable question. Are people failing because they're incapable or because they're inconsistent? Most people think success comes from big decisions, big moves, or big bursts of effort. But if that were true, wouldn't more people sustain results after those bursts? Why does progress often collapse after a strong start? Is it lack of ability or lack of structure? There's a pattern that shows up over and over again. Some people wait until they feel motivated before they act. Others act regardless of how they feel. So here's the question. Which approach produces more consistent results over time? If action depends on emotion, then progress depends on something unstable. But if action depends on a system, then progress becomes predictable. So what are you relying on right now? Feelings or structure? Now think about momentum. Why does starting feel so difficult, but continuing feels easier once you've already begun? What changes between the moment before you act and the moment after you've started? If consistency creates momentum and momentum reduces resistance, then what happens every time you stop? Are you just taking a break or resetting the process? Now let's go deeper. Why do people trust others who are consistent, even if they're not the most talented? Why does showing up repeatedly build reputation faster than occasional excellence? Because consistency signals something deeper. It signals reliability, predictability, stability. So the question becomes this: is consistency just a habit or is it an asset? Now shift that question inward. What happens when you consistently keep promises to yourself? And what happens when you consistently break them? Because confidence doesn't just come from success. It comes from evidence. Evidence that you do what you say you're going to do. So here's the question. Do your daily actions reinforce trust in yourself or weaken it? Now consider this. Why do people quit after missing one day? Why does one mistake often turn into a full reset? Is it because the habit is broken, or because the mindset is? If progress is built over time, then wouldn't returning quickly matter more than being perfect? So what's more damaging, missing once, or using that miss as a reason to stop entirely? Now think about how most people start. They aim high, push hard, and try to change everything at once. But how often does that last? If something feels overwhelming, what usually happens next? Avoidance. Delay. Reset. So here's a better question. What would happen if the goal was so small you couldn't fail? Would consistency increase simply because resistance decreases? If the habit is easy to start, does it become easier to repeat? And if it's repeated enough times, does it eventually become automatic? Now consider tracking. Why does seeing progress make people want to continue? Why does a visible streak feel harder to break than an invisible one? Is it because the action becomes more meaningful, or because the pattern becomes more real? And then there's purpose. Why do some people stay consistent through difficulty, while others stop at the first sign of discomfort? Is it discipline, or is it clarity about what they're working toward? If someone has a strong reason, does the effort feel lighter or just more necessary? So the question becomes this: do you know why you're doing what you're doing, or are you just doing it? When you step back and look at everything together, small actions, repetition, systems, consistency, momentum, trust, purpose, it starts to point to something simple. Progress isn't built in moments, it's built in patterns. So the real question isn't whether you can do something once, it's whether you can do it again and again and again. And if the answer is no, then maybe the problem isn't ability. Maybe it's consistency. Really makes you think.